So, in today's episode, we're going to break down and talk about this whole concept of feminine energy, feminine embodiment, what it means to be in your feminine. These buzzwords get thrown around all the time and they really mess with women's heads a lot. And it's something that so many women that we encounter, and you yourself in your own experience, have really had to sort out all of the, like, try to sort out what all of this means and how do you actually live it. And it's one of the things that dominance and submission has really been for us, has been for you, submission, a practice of living in the expression of feminine, of being in your feminine. And I'd like to really relay today some of what your experience of what it feels like to actually live in your feminine, and maybe give some of the women out there listening and the men who want to understand this some context of what that actually means in a lived experience way. So where did your understanding of this start, and how has it progressed for you?
First of all, I want to say this might be my favorite podcast ever because back at the beginning of when I started down this path, I started to hear the words feminine and masculine. I was like, oh, okay. And feminine embodiment, okay, means to be in your body. Okay, what does that mean? Sure. I live in my body every day. And then it's hard for me to remember completely what it was like, but I remember just wanting to throw my hands in the air and be like, how do I do this? Will someone just please tell me? What do I need to do to get there?
Because there was something in you that felt like this was right for you.
Right, because I was already your submissive when we started to learn some of this. But as soon as I was hearing these words, it was like, okay, so what does that look like in my life? How does that make sense to me? And that's what we all need to do. And so then, I'd heard masculine wounding. And again, I was already on this like emotional unwinding journey of my past. And so I was already recognizing quickly how there's this like masculine doing and there's this feminine being. And again, it was like, well, what do you mean just be? Like, do I just need to sit still all day? Like, I would look at my life and think, how do I be feminine in my life as it is? And that's not asking the right question. And so I just kept trusting that this would unfold. And another time it was like, well, what does it feel like compared to what does it think? What do you think? And I was like, okay, well, I don't know. How do I tell the difference there? And again, I would just be like, okay, I'm going to trust that this is going to continuously make sense for me. And then I would start to connect with these felt experiences in the body. And one of the most powerful things that came across on my journey was like moments that I would be brought to tears, like deep tears. Like it's not just a little bit of like, oh, look at this romantic story. It's just so cute. And you let a tear cry watching a movie. It was deeply felt, experienced emotion. And then I would also get like these, I called them truth goosebumps because it would be like my body saying yes to something going on. And so, again, I would look at other women because I was inputting information through Instagram mainly. And I would look at these coaches and I'd be like, oh my gosh, they've got it figured out. Always an assumption, like they know better than me. I don't know how to do this, but they do. So I would read things and, over time it would, like, I'd have the felt experiences to truth coming through words. Or I'd have the experience of like, that doesn't feel aligned in my system. And so over time, I started to really pay attention to my felt experience in response to so much more of life, along with like my submission to you. And I quickly realized that if I was operating in a lot of my masculine in my life, in the like being responsible and doing everything and having to get shit done. And, there was a time when I was a personal trainer, and so I'm in charge of other people and telling them what to do. And like when I'm in charge, I'm in my masculine. I have to be in control of the situation. And I was putting a lot of energy into that. And it's no surprise that, I would work Monday, Wednesday, Friday, so much output energy that my Tuesday and Thursday, I would feel like, okay, I need to relax today. And essentially, it was like, I need to do nothing.
You needed to recover.
I needed to recover. I needed that yin to the yang.
Mm-hmm.
And I still didn't know what was going on at the time. It was just like oblivious to it. And so, what I quickly realized was I can't just feminize my masculine driven life.
Say more about that.
Um, if I truly was going to connect with my feminine essence, I had to be willing to look at my life as a whole and question everything. And that meant questioning belief systems about things, questioning my identities, questioning my job, questioning my like attachments to these things. Where was I? What was I needing to experience in life in order to feel okay? What was the external validation that I was seeking in order to feel okay? And so slowly I realized like, oh my gosh, this isn't going to work. I can't be more in my feminine while doing life the exact same way that I have been doing it. I had to learn how to let go of certain aspects of life and certain ways that I was showing up, and over and over again.
Along the way, we we started to see dominance and submission more and more through the lens of polarity and through the lens of what these masculine and feminine dynamics and the interplay of the energy between me being in the masculine and you being in the feminine,
Mm-hmm.
and how that brought the dominant submissive dynamic and the power exchange dynamic really down to a practical way of living these energies out. And that was really for us when it started to become more and bigger and feel more like the way, not just something that we did, but the way that we loved each other.
Yeah.
And one of the pieces of language or wording that we put together around this was that the masculine energy is a doing to get energy,
Mm-hmm.
which means going outward first, doing something and then reaping the rewards. It's going out into the world and then it's receiving back from the feminine and being open to receive. So that is like the masculine expression, is to be outward first and then to receive and to be open enough to receive back. So then in the understanding of masculine and feminine, by understanding the opposites, the wording that we put around the feminine at first was receiving to give,
Mm-hmm.
which meant being receptive first, before you give, before you do. But that didn't quite fit it. So what we've eventually come to in the way that we talk about this now and the way that we teach it is this idea of be, receive, and feel, of what it means to be in your expression, in your feminine. So it starts with being so that you can receive, and then you feel, and all of your actions are really taken out of the expression of how you feel based on what you receive.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's important. Um, share. I love how you always like add in the important things to my like chaotic rambling.
You're a good rambler.
um, that's another word that came to the forefront along my journey. But I want to connect this to, I guess, the feminine to the submission, because I wasn't this person who, like a lot of women, it seem to have this desire to submit, to surrender, like just to be ravished, to be taken care of, like lots of different threads we have heard um, when women are sharing vulnerably with like these deepest desires in them that they haven't experienced in life. And to be honest, I was so disconnected from any sort of my feminine essence. And I do believe that it was probably from some sexual trauma earlier in my life that severed it. And I went into, I need to really protect myself because I was not protected in that experience. And what surfaced in me as a response to that, all the emotions that were attached way back in that, it was completely dissociated, that it makes sense to me that I was like, no one's here to protect me, so I need to protect myself.
And you
And
really ended up in the doing to get energy where you were always getting shit done. You were always doing, 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 doing.
right, because that was also displayed to me in the rest of my life then. But like one of the earliest things I believe was something that happened, inside of me, and therefore just kept getting displayed the way I showed up in life, and just became that unconscious pattern of how I was showing up. And I didn't even know any different because, I mean, it was in school, it was then in, raising kids, it just kept going. And oh man, I forgot where I was going with this now. Oh, the feminine and submission.
Mm-hmm.
So, along the way, when I started to come across this language of the feminine, it really felt aligned with what you were speaking about in what you wanted me to experience of submission to you. And then the word surrender, like all of that really started to feel like it was almost all one, but they're all like, in my experience, in my system, I feel them all like entangled in the best way, like not in a ill sense, I guess. And interwoven maybe is the right word. And so when I started to deepen into this submission and this feminine essence, like the truths that I was feeling the yes energy to in my body, the turn on energy in my body, it was to the like emptiness. And when I speak about emptiness, I mean letting go of that control and that thinking I need to do it for myself and letting you into my life, which is exactly what submission is. Because if I'm letting go of the ways that I'm doing everything in life and trying to figure things out and leading myself, I need you to be that for me completely. And so this like surrender and letting go and giving up control and being that empty allows room for me to experience you in a way that when I'm living in the I can do this myself, independence, I don't need anyone to help me, which I wouldn't have said I acted that way, but I did in certain ways. Again, like the way we see ourselves, the way we think we are is very different sometimes than the way we are actually showing up, which is, I laugh. I laugh at myself when I say some of these things. I'm like, yeah, I said that, but that wasn't true. I couldn't even see that about myself. So the more that I connected with this authentic feminine essence, the more that my submission has actually been able to be experienced in a life-changing, deep, profound way.
And the way that I've witnessed that in you has been like these two things have gone hand in hand, but they've gone back and forth a little bit too.
Oh, yes.
Because as you've understood maybe more of how you were in a doing to get energy when you were out trying to get shit done,
Mm-hmm.
you recognize that. You would let that go, trust that I would lead you in it and pick up the slack because in order to submit, in order to surrender, you need something to surrender into. So there was always my side of this where I don't believe that any woman can come into her feminine essence and into her feminine energy without strong masculine presence somewhere, somehow in her life to hold her because she can't let go unless she has something to hold her and to catch her.
I would say fully,
Mhm.
fully in her feminine. Yes.
And I believe that can be God. I believe that it can be approached at least in that way. But in the way that we experienced it, it couldn't really go anywhere until you had the connection to me and the felt sense connection to me where you actually felt safe in your human body to let go.
Well, exactly. So, in my experience, in order to be who I am today, where I am today, I need you in your physical. I needed a physical man
Mhm.
because I could sit here and list all of the things that you do for me and what you are for me and how you are a part of my moment to moment life. And like I depend on you. So there is no way that I could be the woman I am today without your physical presence in my life. No way.
And something that a lot of women struggle with is then this idea that they want to come into their feminine. They want to feel what that is like
They want submission. Yeah.
and they want submission. And a part of that is, like you mentioned before, being willing to question parts of your life that you don't want to question.
Oh my gosh. Like I'm not the same woman I am as I was before in my masculine energy all the time.
Mm-hmm. So I would love to hear you share a little bit about what this has been like for you, because you mentioned it, because we have a lot of women that come to us and they want to be in their feminine, but they don't want to let go of their jobs. They don't want to let go of their activities. Like they're afraid of changing anything about their life. And this isn't to say you have to quit your job and stop doing anything. But at the same time, like you said before, being able to be in a receptive first mindset means you are going to have to question everything and find its place in your life.
Yeah, so I know, for some women, a job is their biggest thing. I didn't have that. My biggest thing was my fitness and nutrition, but they're one of the same.
How so?
Because my identity was, and my need to control and my need to get what I want my way was all wrapped up in my fitness and nutrition.
Fear of letting go, too.
Yeah, like that's the needing to get what I want my way. Like I'm putting the parameters on it. Like, so when I'm doing that, I'm also blocking my receptivity, which is again the feminine. We are receptive first. But when I was so disconnected from myself, I covered that receptivity right up. And so it was like, I can do this myself. And so, yes, like I've had jobs, not because I really loved them, it was because I had to be responsible. And then the personal training thing became, oh, it feels like my passion. And so I was getting validated for this piece of me that needed to control, that needed to have it my way, that was my own wounding. It was attached to my deepest core wounding. And so now I'm putting this as I'm a personal trainer, and everyone's like, oh, you're so good at it. You're so good at exercise. Of course you're a personal trainer. I mean, look at you. And yeah, I was good at it.
Mhm.
Like I wasn't the best, and that was like my own I'd
Well,
compare myself to everybody all the time who was better than me at it.
and comparing yourself to perfect.
Absolutely. And so like I just laugh at this because I can laugh looking back at my deepest attachments to it. And it was, I got to a point where, even in our dom sub relationship, you were guiding me through some of these pieces. And you said, you write all these personal training plans for people. I was like, yes, will you please do that? Write my workouts for me. Well, you and I both know that when you would do that, you would show me the plan, and oh, this was before I would speak up very well, but my expression was written all over my lack of receptivity to it. And you would show me and be like, well, but you're not doing it my way. You're not doing it how that person on the internet said. You're not doing it perfect. And so it was just me still trying to control this piece that I was like, hey, take care of this for me. It was like, here, I want you to do it, but I want you to do it my way. And so I'm trying to give this up, but I'm blocking any receptivity at the same time. And so, gosh, we watch this unwind. I mean, how long has this been going on inside of me? For years. But again, it was it was attached to some of my deepest wounding. So of course, this is not a flip of a switch. I see all of how this is affecting me in life. But wow, have I learned a lot about my need to control things and have life my way all throughout the process. And so I had to start recognizing that the way that I thought fitness needed to be done, the way I thought nutrition needed to be done, again, outsourcing all of that, allowing other people to be my dominant, to be that they know better than me. I wasn't listening to my body. It was outsourcing everything. And so as I started to recognize that the way I was showing up in my fitness and my nutrition was actually not serving me. And I had to, my body eventually physically started saying, like, stop doing this to your lower body. And I was like, no, I can do it. It was like, nope. It's like, yes, I can. Nope. Yes, I can. And eventually, I can't remember what happened at that, like, between in our dynamic with that, but eventually, like, you just took over more of it. And even the way, oh, let me back up. When you originally took over it, you gave it back to me. You're like, no, you're not following me. You're not listening to me. You're not being receptive to me. You're going to do it for yourself now. And I was like, what are you talking about? And I still, like, that was at the beginning and I still didn't learn. Like, that was years ago. Anyway.
Just to touch on that quickly, my experience of that, when you talk about blocking receptivity, when you have two people trying to both be the masculine, both be the leadership, you're going to have conflict. That's the only thing that can happen. And so when I was trying to do something for you that you had asked me to do, and rather than receive it and then go with it and reflect back to me how it felt and what your experience was so I could learn from it, there was resistance, there was
Fear.
disapproval that came from fear,
Mm-hmm.
but it came out as disapproval of how I was doing it. It came out as judgment of my abilities,
Yep.
and it came out really as I can't do it as well as you can. So my two choices were to have conflict, which is what happens if you're trying to be both be in your masculine. I would have to somehow take you out of that space by doming you in the way that like a domineering dom would think about doing it, which is force you out of the masculine.
Yeah.
That's the only option I have to stay in the dominant role there. Otherwise, I have to cater to you and to, I basically have to let the fear be the one in charge and be like, did I do good now? No, I don't like it that way. Did I do good now? No, I don't like it that way. And now you're the one who's in the dominant role.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why at that point I gave it back to you, because I wasn't going to fight you for it and I wasn't going to force you out of the space that you were occupying.
Right. So I think it's important to note that when I say fitness, a lot of what I was doing was like bodybuilding, heavy lifting, work hard. If I wasn't like hurting or like exhausted after my workout, it wasn't good enough.
Mm-hmm.
So that was how I was showing up in there. And so eventually, like, I had to recognize that this actually wasn't serving my body, and my body was starting to say no. And so it was really hard. It was like, this is all I've ever known. This is how I thought it needed to be. Like, I've told myself I love this. And now I am saying I can't do this. Like, what's wrong with me?
Who am I now?
Yeah, like I am that person. Like, I am that person that people think is good at exercise. But then as soon as I said that, it was like, oh my God, that's true. Like, that's who I'm showing myself to be in the world. Of course they're going to say that because that's what I'm putting forth. How can they see the real me if I'm not bringing her to the surface? And so then it was like trying out the yoga and trying out less intensity. And like, I've done a lot of different things. And the other aspect of this whole like feminine thing that really brought more of this to the surface is connecting with the ever-changing nature, the feminine flow. Like, oh, I'm a different woman kind of hormonally inside every day of my cycle. So here's me trying to like do, push hard every single day, not even paying attention to the fact that I'm exhausted. My body actually doesn't like it. And I'm just still trying to get that perfectly lean, skinny little body that I wanted. Like that's what I was chasing. And I had to start letting myself feel the pain of the way I was showing up and all the effort that I had put into trying to get there that now is actually not it. It's the wrong way. It's detrimental to what it means to be a woman. And I had to stand face to face with that. And so what I started to realize is my desires on how I want to move my body and my desires on what feels good to me is just different and it's changing and I can accept that. So I couldn't keep putting myself into this structure that I created for myself on who I needed to be and how I needed to show up. I had to let it go completely. And the reason I say that for some women it's their job is because we've heard this before of like they start down this concept of connecting to their feminine, which I believe is like the authentic soul experience. And it's like, oh man, I, I don't feel the same way about my job, or I feel like I'm just exhausted at the end of my day, or like, and then I'm trying to be in my feminine at home. And like, how do I do that? Like, we've heard that time and time and time again. And so,
Specifically the challenge that women have when they start down this embodiment, this, whether it's submission or just polarity, feminine embodiment, whatever it is for them,
mhm,
I think they're all the same.
mhm,
They get into this place where it's like feeling like they have to switch back and forth. I
mhm.
have to go to my work, be in my masculine, come home, try to be in my feminine.
Yeah.
And they burn themselves to the ground.
Yeah. And an important aspect is like, if someone asked you, who are you? How would you answer that question? Oh, I am Dawn. I'm a personal trainer. I'm a mom. I'm a wife. I am all these outside things. And that's, it might be a job for some women. Like I said, for me, it was that fitness and nutrition. It can be a lot of different things, but it's like you really have to look at where am I attached to the I am, that identity, out of a lot of times my own wounding or like just not being connected to myself. But that is the beautiful nature of when we come down this path and we connect with that authentic experience. Like authentic is real, it's true, it's pure. And if like any woman who's listening to this, if you're like connecting with that, like accept it. Like, I hear some say like there's no fragments of you, there's no pieces, you're whole. Well, when we've been showing up in a disconnected way, in a disconnected sense of self, like it does feel like this piece of you that you've haven't accepted, that you've shamed, that you've judged, that hasn't been able to come to the surface. And so allowing that to be felt and seen and witnessed and experienced is only going to bring forth more of the real you. And in my experience, that is like the feminine essence and my submission are one of the same. Like it feels like this is life-giving. This is me being in my fullness inside of you, inside of our relationship.
Something that's really hard for women to wrap their heads around then is, how do I do this? That is the inevitable question that comes up, because when we start talking about receiving, right, being filled up by the world around you and being able to live in the fullness of your authenticity and being who you are and being able to give from a place of being full, being full of love and not drained, not burned out, not tired all the time, honoring your body, honoring who you are. We talk about this and women want it. It's what they're missing when they're feeling so lost.
Yeah.
And it's what I saw you missing when I could feel how lost you were, chasing down all of the different ways you were trying to do something to get yourself to a place where you could feel okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the the hardest question is, how do I do that? Because you can't do it. This is a state of being. Being in your feminine is not something you can do. You cannot get there. You cannot try. You cannot force it by going through a checklist or by working towards it. It is a process of letting go. It's a process of slowing down. It's a process of coming back home to realize that you never needed to go anywhere or get anything done in order to be okay. So, what do you say to women who are asking the question about wanting this, wanting to be able to feel this way? And they say, how do I do it?
I don't know. Um, it's really connecting with your essence through your body and really tuning into what is that for yourself. And none of this changes in a day. My life feels like I continually expand by the day, like the smallest percentage. But first and foremost, you have to get in touch with, your emotional awareness, your experience, and really learn how to accept your own emotional expression. I mean, that's step one. And that's only going to start showing you the path forward. Like it really, when I say emotional awareness is like the entry point into submission, it truly is. Because it is submission, being in your feminine is a responsive thing. Like we are meant to receive, respond, and feel. And I will come back to that if you have more there, but I want to share this aspect in regards to that because, we talk about this moment to moment experience. Well, again, that was one of those things where I'm like, what does that mean? Well, over time, I've been able to notice the times when I'm being very present with you, when I'm in tune in this conversation, or am I sitting here looking at you, but really thinking about maybe what I'm going to say next, or thinking about what else is on the to-do list today. That's what I used to do all the time. Like, I'm sure we all have been there in life where we're sitting with someone and it's like, what did you just say? And I'm not saying I'm perfect at that because, it just happens. We still have a mind that is trying to be active. But this moment to moment experience thing is the more that I've been able to be here in the now and notice when I'm ruminating on the past, when I'm bringing a past something about myself, emotional experience or whatever into the present, or when I'm jumping out into the future about, well, what if, all the fear of the unknown, the uncertainty, everything is so uncertain about the world, but most of us live in this facade of certainty, which isn't really true. I mean, none of us know exactly what's going to happen in an hour, but we act like we do. And we try to control life to make sure we know what we're doing. And so the more that I've been able to stop myself from jumping there, I've actually been able to deepen into my own emotional experience in a way that I can't even put words to. And it's allowed me to really be honest and true that the more that I'm jumping out into the future and trying to make all the plans, create any sort of vision, worry about what might happen, like for one, it's not turning me on. Sometimes it can. Like there's ways to have fun and be creative and think big and possibility. Yes, but when we're trying to think about the future in a way that we need to make sure we know what's going to happen or control something or think we have to have something our way in order to be okay, none of that is present moment thing. So again, the more that I can tune into the here and now, like that is tuning into your feminine responsiveness, your feminine essence. And therefore, I can truly share everything about it with you in order for you to lead me. Like that's been the beautiful piece of our journey is this continuously, you lead me to this life that I didn't even know was possible. I didn't even dream up this good. And so when I've let go, what I've received back is everything and then some. When I've taken my hands off the wheel.
This is where it gets challenging because if you're a person who's lived a lot of your life in fear or feeling like I have to do it myself, I have to take care of myself. If you want it done right, you have to do it yourself, whatever that is. Living in that energy feels like the only thing that's okay.
It's because it's the only thing you've known.
Right. And letting go of that feels terrifying.
Absolutely. Understandable. Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, if you have everything figured out for yourself, if you have a plan for yourself and you're attached to the outcome of like what needs to happen, how you need to get there, and what the final product needs to look like, there is no space for me to lead you because now my way is wrong and your way is right.
Right.
So, in order to receive something better, you do have to let go of what your own plans are, your own preferences are, your own attachments are. And that allows you to open yourself to that receptivity. And in order to even start to approach that, this is why I mentioned earlier this language came about of be, receive, and feel. And we've done a whole episode on slowing down,
Mm-hmm.
but we can't have this conversation without mentioning the fact that any woman who wants to live in her feminine has got to be able to slow down and be present in the moment, like you mentioned. And that means that if your life is scheduled out, if you've planned out every moment of your day, if you are running a to-do list constantly and you've filled up every moment, there is no space for you to do the be part that even lets you start to approach the receive part.
Right.
And we witnessed this because I saw this and I knew that it was important to get you slowed down, but I would try to slow you down. I would try to remove obligations from your life. But until you were ready to actually slow down, you just filled that time up with other obligations.
Yeah. And when I had more time because my personal training job was over, I started just inputting all the information, which is what it is because it led me to more of the language around what we were experiencing by letting go. But it also assisted me in a lot of ways. It was serving me until it wasn't anymore. And then eventually I had to let go of inputting all of that information because I came to the point of like, I can't keep having someone else try to tell me how to be in my body. I have to learn this from the inside out. I had to really start tuning into what is it like to be in my body, because nobody else can tell me that. And that's been like the most beautiful thing. And alongside of that, you can't not do that without adding in the sexuality piece. Like, these are all intertwined because our bodies are sex at their essence. Like,
Well, and here's a little connection point I think a lot of women can identify with. If you are running all day, if you're busy, if your schedule is full, and you've gone solid with busyness from the moment you woke up till the time you're ready to go to bed, are you horny?
yeah, exactly. No, the busier I am, the more not turned on I am.
Right. Because for the feminine, being in turn on means being receptive. The feminine is receptive sexually. So being in that sexual aliveness and in that sexual desire requires that you are in a receptive state, which you can't be in if you are already spoken for in every moment of your day.
Yeah, and so another aspect of this that I think is important to note in this feminine and masculine, and we've talked about this before, but in regards to masculine consciousness and then the feminine as love and the eros. And there was a point on my journey where I felt the truth coming out of me that my surrender also had to be like the surrendering of my consciousness to yours. That I needed to connect fully to the love that I am at my essence. And like, my submission is surrendering that consciousness. And what I felt in that was the surrendering my having to have my way all the time, having to decide everything about life, having to just be in that more masculine energy output, all of what that entails. You can expand on that if you wish, but I felt that solid in my being of, this is what your life is meant to be an experience in your feminine, through your submission, connected to your sex all the way. And it was one of the most profound, like, relieving experiences to my system, where I'm like, oh my gosh, I actually am not meant to know all of this, to have to figure everything out, to have to do everything for myself. Like, that allowed me to soften even more and to open myself to your leadership even more. And again, this is a felt experience. This wasn't you telling me, even though a lot of the things that you would tell me, okay, I'm receiving them in my mind, but there's a difference then in letting, I'm going to call it knowledge from that aspect. But when there's words put to truths that are innately in us as humans, because we're spiritual beings, because that's what they're connecting with. And
That's why
so,
you get things like truth goosebumps, and why,
exactly.
like for me, it's tears come to my eyes. We have these physical sensations that I think most people, if they tune into them, experience on some level when something resonates with what's true inside of you.
Right. And, looking back on my life, I'm like, well, gosh, why didn't I experience that before? Maybe I did in small amounts, maybe I didn't. I've had a few like knowings in my body because, again, another part of my journey was like, what? I'm not intuitive. Like, Myers-Briggs didn't tell me I'm intuitive, so I don't know what this feminine intuition, feminine wisdom thing is. Well, the reason that I didn't feel like I was fully, even really at all, connected to it was because of the pain from my past, because of the woundings and the emotional pain that I was carrying. So, like it really feels like I had a black garbage bag that I lugged over my shoulder every day, and I'm carrying all of this emotional wounding with me. Meanwhile, I had the castle built around my heart, so no one was going to hurt me. So when I'm so disconnected to this love and this essence inside of me, of course I'm not connected with the depth of what it means to be a woman.
And you couldn't listen to it. You
No,
you couldn't hear it even if it was there because you were so busy and your mind was so active and your life was so overwhelmingly full all the time.
I think that's another actually important aspect is this whole being thing that we talk about is being able to slow that mind. And that's important for all humans.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, that's really what it was, is to really be able to drop out of that mind and notice it when it's that inner roommate, that voice in your head that wants to talk to you all the time, and really just learn how to just say no, thank you. And really, that's what has helped me to fully connect to my body, because that's like step one is you have to notice when I'm in my rabbit holes, and
Mm-hmm.
monkey mind is another way to say it, and really be able to be still in my body. But again, that has required a lot of emotional unwinding and letting go of pain from my past.
There's a reason that we go into our heads. And there's a reason that we go into this kind of hyper active, very alert, kind of fear based fight or flight energy
Mhm.
because we're in our head because it doesn't feel safe to be present in our body. We're trying to think our way out of whatever feels uncomfortable in the moment. And that's why, I experience a lot of women who want to live in their feminine as really just trying to, like you said earlier, fit their lives into a definition of feminine so that they can call themselves that because they want to be identified as that and seen as that. They want to feel that way about themselves.
Mhm.
So they try to think their way into a definition of feminine that allows them to stay in their heads and stay out of their bodies and avoid the discomfort of all of that emotional pain, to avoid dealing with the woundings that they're carrying around with them from the ways that they've been hurt in the past, and instead stay in this energy of, I can do it by myself. I can do it without a man. I can do it without a connection to God. I can keep everything about my life the same, but I want to be able to call myself feminine. I want to be able to put that label on me because I think it looks good. I think men want it. It'll make me feel better about myself.
Yeah, and the question that was coming through me when you were talking about all of this feels kind of important, and it's, who do I need to be in order to be lovable? And that's where these identities somewhat come from. So who do I need to be in order to get love in my life? Because the biggest thing is we're so disconnected from ourselves. In our early years, I truly believe that the way this kind of works is we're looking to these caregivers in our lives, mom and dad mostly, but then other ones, to reflect the love back to us. And we have, like, part of our human experience is learning what it means to love ourselves and to be in our fullness as love, as women. And so, like, we're chasing all of these things outside of ourselves in order to feel okay inside. And I think I need to be this. Okay, now I can love myself. But do you? So, like, along my journey, I, one moment after yoga, like, this just brings me back to tears. I think I've shared this before. Is I was laying there and I was like, I don't know where this came from. This was my soul speaking, like, God, fuck me wide open. And that is an important thing that I keep coming back to is where am I grasping? Where am I trying to control my life experience? Because my growth has shown me that the only thing I've done is limit myself. I've controlled my own soul's experience here on this earth, and I only get this one. And so I'm committed to big. Once I realized, like, oh my gosh, I don't even desire, I don't even like wish for anything. I'm like, no, let's take hands off the wheel. Let's take the control off the box and let's live big. And so that question can be a really important reflection is, God, fuck me wide open. Where am I trying to control the life experience that I could have? Show me. Like, where do I need to let go of? Maybe it's a relationship, maybe it's a job, maybe it's some identities, maybe it's material possessions. Like, who knows what it is? It's going to be multiple things. Like, look out if you actually want to ask yourself that question, because you're going to go for a wild ride, but it can be exciting at the same time.
And the thing you least want to let go of is probably the thing that you're being most called to consider.
Yep, hands down, absolutely. Anytime I've had a like, oh fuck, no, nope, that actually, once I allowed myself to feel into the threads that were there for me, consider, maybe it's consider the opposing perspective, like really playing devil's advocate with yourself. Holy cow. And so, again, I haven't had to do this by myself. You've been here along the way and you've been the one leading me through all of this. And so I wouldn't be who I am today. But I've had to be willing.
Mm-hmm.
I've had to be willing to receive the truths that you bring forward, receptive. Again, there's that word, to seeing things that I didn't want to see for myself, letting go of things that I didn't want to let go of, letting go of things that I didn't feel like I knew how to let go of, but continuously asking God, show me, like, rip me open, help me let go. And here I am having a life experience that is better than I ever imagined.
And I imagine some women listening to this are hearing like letting go of this, letting go of this, letting go of this, and feeling as though if I let go, I'm going to be taken advantage of, I'm going to be taken for granted, I'm going to be hurt, and everything is going to go wrong. I hold on to this stuff because it's how I make myself feel okay.
Yes, understandable. Again, like, I was there. But when we can let go of that pain, because that's what's blocking our hearts, we can be open to life better than we can even imagine it ourselves. Because when we're carrying that pain from our past, we're just looking for more pain. We wouldn't say we are, but we are, because that's what we're carrying. And that's what we're going to focus on. And so when we can feel those emotions, drop the pain from the past, rip our hearts open, we are going to receive a life better than we can even formulate it ourselves.
When you say looking for more pain, I know what you're meaning here, and I want to bring that point home because when we are hurt, when we have this pain, this past pain that we're bringing with us into the present moment, and we're bringing it into the future with us, we are still acting as though that's happening to us.
Yep.
And we make assumptions that it's going to happen again. There's fear that anything that reminds us of that, this is what a trigger is. It reminds you of something from the past and remind, right? It brings it back into your mind. It brings it back into the present from the past. And now you're having an experience of the past pain and the present pain. And so the reason that we are looking for more pain when we're carrying our pain is because we're afraid of the same thing happening again. So we're on the lookout. This is where that hypervigilance comes from that a lot of women find themselves in. They're carrying this pain with them. The pain of not being taken care of. Generally, a lot of it can be lumped underneath this one umbrella, which is if you are a soft, gentle, feminine being who's meant to be receptive and to be able to be present and feeling, you need to be protected. You need to be looked after and taken care of. And if you haven't been and you've been hurt, you're going to be on the defense, on the lookout for anything that feels like it's going to do that again.
Absolutely. And if you're having a strong, like, that's not me reaction to even hearing that, it might be.
That's the pain talking right there.
Right, because that pain is our comfortable, familiar zone. Like I shared earlier that I had something happen to me as a little girl, and I had completely forgotten the memory until I went down this journey, and all of a sudden it came forth out of my body with like some big tears and fear and terror and multiple episodes of that. And I didn't even know it was there. And in my mind, I always thought, oh, I didn't have any trauma. Like, my life was fine. It was good. And so I can think one thing, but it doesn't mean that my body hasn't absorbed something different. And so you cannot be in your feminine. You cannot connect to the authentic submission without being in your body. And when we carry that pain from the past, it is going to affect our own authentic life experience. But when we commit to showing up for ourselves and being receptive and being open and letting go, like this stuff just can continuously unwind. And when we have someone that we discern that is worthy of leading us in our lives, like the truth that you can reflect to me, like I've learned that I can trust that even in the moments where I have a like, oh my God, no, to something that you feel solid in, that I can let that permeate my being, and it's a gift to me in a way that I couldn't do that for myself. And again, that's the beautiful aspect of this kind of relationship. I do want to share another important piece that I think is important in the feminine as an adult woman.
Mm-hmm.
Is along the way sometime I started thinking about, I started doing inner child work. And this was through the first thing I ventured into was by the holistic psychologist. I did her inner child meditation. And I had this experience where I was brought back to my childhood home. And I'm not going to share anything more about it because if you haven't done it, go do it. It's on YouTube, inner child meditation. And like I was able to connect with this like piece of myself that was this little girl that was like experiencing some pain. And I had so many tears in that thing. And it was just like so opening to my system in a whole new way. And that was towards the beginning of my journey. But then along the way, I was like, gosh, thinking about little girls, I started watching them and how fun they are. You know, I guess they can be a lot sometimes. That's part of us.
Yep.
But when you start to look at these little girls, like just playing and lost, or watching a little girl look at her daddy and like just connecting with that innocence, when I started to feel into what is that? Why does that have to die in us? And I was like, it doesn't. It doesn't. That playful nature, that is our aliveness and arrows that we get to actually live in more full expression than even little girls do. So when I started looking back at that, I was like, all right, how can I bring out little Dawn? How can I have more fun again? Because gosh, I've kind of made my life boring
And serious.
and serious. It was like, go to bed at this time because sleep matters, and eat this food but not that, and don't drink too much, and make sure you work out really hard, and like blah. I really started to look at my life. I'm like, gosh, what fun do I have? Like, I know this was both of us at the same time. And so the more that I'm like, fun, yes. I mean, that's one of our things in our promise contract is like, we're committed to fun with each other.
Yeah.
And I'm committed to being fun. And I love, like, I've started to really lean into being silly again and making you laugh and bringing out the smiles and going to the park and just hopping on the swing and having you push me. I mean, it's just fun. And then, like, that's just the tip of the iceberg.
And it warms my heart seeing you playful and fun and just alive in such an innocent way, but in such there's so much freedom in it.
Hmm.
And that's just it's deeply meaningful to me when I get to see you in that. And a part of that is when you are in that energy, when you're in that energy of connecting to that innocence, that playfulness, you can release some of the self-control.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. Like looking at that little girl, she's not trying to dictate what time they go home from the park.
No, she wants to stay there even when it's time to go home, but she needs containment. She needs to be told what she needs and what is right for her. And she needs to be the playful one. She needs to be in that freedom and in that expression. And she might not like it when it's time to go home.
Right.
But if she's the one deciding for herself that I've had enough park now because now it's time to go home and brush my teeth, she's not being a child. She's not free. And that's the whole freedom of being in the feminine, is being able to take off those chains of self-control that you've put on yourself and all the ways that you've limited yourself, and instead trust in the the safety of, first of all, me, but even on a bigger perspective than that, the fact that things will work out well if you let yourself live in that abundance of freedom and of aliveness.
Yeah. I ask myself quite frequently, what would little Dawn do? Having fun versus old boring Dawn trying to just control herself.
Mhm. And back in the dominant submissive perspective here for a second, one of the ways that I've taught you about this has been that if you are controlling yourself, you don't need me.
Exactly.
We did this episode about being your own dominant. Like, if you are doming yourself, what purpose do I even serve as the one leading you if you are leading yourself? And that is what feminine embodiment and feminine expression and being in your feminine really means, is letting go of self-control and letting go of all of this. I have to do this to get that, and it has to be this way to keep me safe from that, and I have to protect myself over here. And you can never do your way into being. You will never do your way into this kind of freedom. You can only find it by letting go and 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 coming back to the essence of who you are.
And in my experience, like I'm committed to seeing myself in the ways that I've limited, and someone might hear this and think, oh my gosh, you really need him to like be that control for you. Well, yeah, that's what I actually want. Like, you know, the ways that we look at what being an adult means.
Mhm.
But even I am willing to challenge that. What are the belief systems in me that think that I have to do this just because I'm an adult? And so for me, it really feels good and expansive to let you be all of the structure possible in our lives together, because that has only brought out more sexuality, more fun, eros, aliveness, all of that, more love, more everything to the surface when I just keep letting myself be more of me. And I believe like this will can just continuously expand. So like we're committed to how good can this get? And that means how big and expansive, abundant can life get versus just living like, oh, this is good. This is, we're content here.
Yeah, going through kind of the motions of life and playing small and keeping it safe.
Right.
It's why we're doing what we do for a living.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of the corporate job and the 9 to 5 paycheck, throw caution to the wind and share our lives with vulnerability with the world and let other people come to us if they want it. But it's an abundant, expansive way to approach life. And to your point a bit ago, do you really need me to be all that control for you? No, you did just fine on your own.
Fine is not okay.
Exactly. Because the way that you did it for yourself, you survived, you got
Mhm.
by, you functioned,
Yeah.
but you set your own limits at the point that you felt safe and okay, that kept you in your comfort zone, that kept you from experiencing anything dangerous or that you at least felt was dangerous.
And I kept making myself smaller.
And so, what you need me for is to set the limits at a place where you are taken care of and safe, but way more free to roam in your expression and in your freedom.
And this is why the feminine is equated to the ocean.
Mhm. Because that, how big that is, how big that expression is, as you are set free from the ways you limited yourself, is so much bigger than what you had any clues inside of you.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you need me to be that control for you? Yes, because you need me to remove the control you placed on yourself so that you can experience how good life can be.
Amen. Thank you.
I appreciate this conversation a lot, and I think this is going to be helpful for a lot of people. And if you're a woman who is listening to this and hearing this and wanting this experience of life for yourself, please stay in touch with us, get in touch with us. This is what we do, is we help people find their way to this way of life and into this way of living. And it's an honor to be here, to be sharing our lives with you, and to have an opportunity to help guide you to whatever experience of life that you want to have.
And I would love to hear your experience in the comments. So please share if you're willing.
Thank you for listening and watching.
Yes. Thank you for being here with us.